Anthony Overton is largely recognized as the first person to ever successfully market complexion goods exclusively to the Black demographic. He's also the first African American to own a conglomerate. However, his name is hardly ever mentioned in the mainstream makeup space. This is Beauty History with Cici Andersen. That's me, a place where I tell you all the interesting things I learn as I look for the deeper meaning behind our daily grooming rituals, Hollywood makeup magic, ancient health and beauty secrets, and other tidbits I find as I look for truth and purpose and spiritualism in my chosen career of hair and makeup artistry. So, if this sounds like something you want to hear more about, hit that subscribe button. Okay, so this is the part where I get to sort of relax and go off script a little bit. There's a lot of things I want to say, starting with thank you so much for being here and supporting the new podcast. What's new is that you can listen on Spotify as well as watch here on YouTube. And I'm so happy that we've grown from 26 subscribers to 300. And the expansion of this little community has really encouraged me to keep talking about what I love best, which is my makeup and hair artistry. And I started talking about it in 2019 when I hit a wall in my career where I was just no longer inspired by Instagram makeups and product launches. And it just wasn't enough to keep me going. And I was looking for a reason behind why we do what we do, because obviously none of us are curing cancer doing hair and makeup. But there is something to it because we all do it and we've been doing it for thousands of years. So I really wanted to dig a little bit deeper into why that is. And those are all subjects we'll be covering later on in this series, I hope. Today, we're here to talk about Anthony Overton, who is a very interesting character in history who I don't think gets talked enough about. And as you can see behind me, I have quite an expansive collection of makeup artifacts. And I did this kind of blanket search, because I'm always looking for another treasure, another thing to add to my collection. And I did this blanket Google search and I was thinking, man, I don't know that much about Black cosmetics or Black cosmetics history in the United States specifically, because every area of the world has their own history. But I was specifically interested in the United States. And so I did this Google search and eBay search, and I started finding all of these different cosmetics. Of course, along with that came names like Iman or Rihanna, and of course, Madam C.J. Walker. I actually, in this very same period of time, I actually found a Madam C.J. Walker hair tin about the size of a quarter. It was about this big for $450 on eBay. And I thought, oh, I wish I could get this. But honestly, we were all sitting at home and not really knowing if we were ever going to work again. So I decided to maybe forego the $450 purchase, vintage purchase. I decided not to. Anyway, I ended up with I think it's somewhere behind me in these boxes, but I had one called LeJac. There's one called Hi Hat. And I came across this tiny little box called Overton's High Brown Le Petite Face Powder. And it's in the shade Creole Tan. And it says Overton Hygienic Manufacturing Company, Chicago, USA. And then this is what the packaging it's unopened. But you can see the color is actually not, it's actually not that dark. This could easily match me, this color. So, for those that are listening and not watching, I am a pale olive tone. So I went back and forth in my head a little bit about whether or not this box belongs with me because of the conversations that were being had in this period of time. Honestly, I actually can't remember if I bought this in 2020 or 2019, but it's still same thing. I just felt like this isn't my history. I'm obviously not a Black person, but there are very few people who do what I do and collect vintage cosmetics. I couldn't think of anybody else in my world who would appreciate it as much as I appreciate vintage cosmetics. So I thought, as a steward of the history and of industry, right, like of makeup artistry and hairdressing and all, I felt like it does have a good home with me for at least the time being. And until I open my own museum, I will share it here on the internet with all of you and hopefully be able to impart some wisdom and history that I've learned just from having come across this little box on the internet one day. And the story is really important. I mean, this company was founded in the early 1900s. What did I just touch over there? In the early 1900s, and just I can't believe that this person is not more known for his contributions to not only the industry but to Black Americans. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to look up my notes and I'm going to get into the story. Ding.
Early years in Monroe, Louisiana.
Anthony was born on March 21st, 1865, at the tail end of the Civil War and at the beginning of Reconstruction. Now, if you're not familiar with Reconstruction or what that means, it's a document that was added to the American Constitution to sort of revise the political and legal status of Black Americans in the United States. Anthony was born into slavery, but it ended when he was about 5 years old. I can't imagine what his parents must have been going through, having the world basically open up to them, but not really having any security or trajectory or system set up for them. And so the family moves to Topeka, Kansas. And this isn't just where Anthony graduates from high school, this is also where he learns his first hustle. He opens a fruit and grocery store, which honestly, brilliant. Everybody needs food, right? So this guy is definitely very dedicated, logical, and methodical. So he takes all of the money that he earned from that business and put it towards earning his college degree at Washburn College, where he graduates with a bachelor's of law and chemistry. And low key, I think that this is where he meets his sweetheart, Clara Gregg. And, there's very little information about their relationship. She very quickly, I think, locks it down because they end up with four beautiful babies just a few years before Anthony becomes the municipal judge of Topeka, which means he must have been a pretty good lawyer. But they don't stay there very long.
Learning the hustle in Kansas City, Missouri.
So Anthony takes his family's life savings and opens the Overton Manufacturing Company. And at first, he starts out very humbly with only one product, just baking powder. It's not even makeup related. But it's not long before he expands to other toiletries, cosmetics, and perfumes, targeting his target demographic, the African American woman. And so High Brown Face Powder is born. And Anthony knows that there's a hole in the market. Servicing his community propels him into victory, and he starts out with only 4 shades. It even says on the packaging, we take pride in the glowing beauty of our various shades, which, by the way, there are just 4: high brown, nut brown, olive tone, and brunette. That's it. And things were going really great for Anthony and his family. He was making a ton of money with his door to door sales. That is, until the Kansas flood of 1902, which completely wiped out his business and his manufacturing company. In fact, it wiped out the whole district. So Anthony decides that he's not only going to rebuild, he is going to build back better, stronger, and nationwide, baby. Eventually, the company is able to join the international market in Egypt, Liberia, and Japan. Anthony wasn't just making a living, he was making a killing.
1916, Mogul status in Chicago, Illinois.
Anthony didn't just improve cosmetic formulas for Black women, he also improved cosmetic packaging. You see, in the white department stores that deigned to serve the Black demographic, they would just wrap up the cosmetics in plain black and white paper. Anthony, on the other hand, decided that he wanted his users' experience to be just as good as that were being sold in the white department stores. So he prints colorful packaging with great lettering and really make sure that the user experience is every bit as lovely. So you can appreciate that the care that Anthony put into his cosmetics allowed the business to grow quickly. By 1927, he employed 150 people in clerical and manufacturing positions, most of them Black women. In 1916, Overton decides to go into publishing. So he founds Half Century Magazine, which was actually just a brilliant marketing ploy to promote his own products. In addition, though, they also supported the efforts of the NAACP and the early civil rights movement, which really appealed to the young, educated Black demographic.
1922, Anthony establishes Douglas National Bank.
With the founding of the bank, Overton became Jesse Binga's principal competitor. Jesse Binga owned Binga State Bank, which was the largest Black-owned bank in the nation. This made Anthony not only a millionaire, but the most successful Black businessman in America. Sadly, Overton died at the age of 81 in Chicago on July 2nd, 1946. His business continued, however, and in the early 80s, it shut down finally. The city of Chicago actually took it over and turned it into a public library. The building, however, was added to the National Registry of Historic Places in 1986.
The conclusion.
The 1960s civil rights movement saw the desegregation of makeup counters as well as higher income for Black families, which was great, except for the niche businesses like Anthony's, who relied on the Black consumer to keep it going. Now, suddenly, businesses like Anthony's were competing for the same customer with businesses like Maybelline and Avon, even though Avon didn't even use Black models in Ebony magazine until 1961. I wanted to mention that when I was researching this story, I found only 100 hashtag posts containing Anthony Overton's name on Instagram. In comparison, I found 33,000 posts containing the name Madam C.J. Walker, which I largely consider to be his hair counterpart because Anthony sort of focused on color cosmetics while she was sort of developing hair care at the exact same time, actually. It seems like there was a bit of an overlap here. I hope you enjoyed this segment, and I hope you'll meet me back here next month for another story.
A Cici Andersen production.